We don't have that kind of money lying around, Hannah. You need to be realistic about this. My father stood in the doorway of my small apartment, his arms crossed, his voice as cold as the winter air outside. Behind him, my mother nodded silently, her lips pressed into that familiar thin line of disapproval. I stood there frozen, my 7-year-old son, Ethan, asleep in the next room, the sound of his labored breathing mingling with the soft hum of the oxygen machine. On the kitchen table, piles of medical bills were spread out like evidence of my failures. $85,000. That's what the specialist said it would take. The cost of an experimental treatment that could save Ethan's life. His rare heart condition had stopped responding to regular therapies. Time was running out. My name is Hannah Reed, I'm 31, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I teach middle school science and raise Ethan alone. His father left when Ethan was diagnosed at age 3, said he couldn't handle having a sick kid. That was 4 years ago. And since then, I've been fighting this battle alone. My parents live just 20 minutes away in their cozy suburban home, the same house where my younger sister, Claire, still has her childhood bedroom perfectly preserved, like a museum exhibit of innocence. Realistic? I repeated, my voice trembling. Dad, my son could die without this treatment. The doctor said he has maybe 6 months left if we don't act now. My mother stepped closer, gently touching my father's arm, her way of softening the blow without contradicting him. Honey, we understand this is hard, but we've already helped you so much over the years. We paid for 3 of his surgeries. We can't just empty our retirement accounts. I'm not asking you to empty them, I pleaded. I just need a loan. I'll pay you back, every penny. I'll take a second job, whatever it takes. My father shook his head slowly. Hannah, you're barely keeping your head above water as it is. How would you pay us back? Be sensible. There are payment plans, medical financing options. Look into those. I had looked. I'd spent weeks researching every possible avenue, but the payment plans took too long. Ethan didn't have years. The financing companies wanted interest rates that would drown me, and most wouldn't approve me anyway. Not with my credit and medical debt. You're my last hope, I said. Barely a whisper. For a second, I thought my mother might sway him. But then my father's voice came again, final and cold. We can't do it, Hannah. I'm sorry, but we have to think about our own future, too. We're not getting any younger. They left soon after. I watched their car disappear into the night from my window, my body numb. The weight of their refusal pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. I went into Ethan's room and sat beside his bed, listening to the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen machine. His small chest rose and fell unevenly. He looked so peaceful, so unaware that his own grandparents had just refused to save his life. The next morning, I started calling every relative I could think of. Distant cousins, my mom's siblings, even old family friends. Most offered kind words, a few small donations. My Aunt Teresa sent $500 with a note that said, I wish it could be more. I was grateful for every cent. But it felt like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. 2 weeks later, after a brutal day at school, I came home to find Ethan struggling to breathe. His lips had a faint blue tint. Panic shot through me. I called an ambulance and we raced to the hospital. They stabilized him, but the cardiologist, Dr. Morrison, pulled me aside, his expression grave. His condition is deteriorating faster than expected. Without that treatment, he might have 3 months at most, maybe less. 3 months. That's all the time I had left to find $85,000. That night, I started a crowdfunding campaign. I poured my heart into the description, uploading pictures of Ethan's bright smile before he got so sick. Friends shared it, teachers donated, even a few parents from school chipped in. 2 weeks later, we had raised $12,000. It wasn't even close to enough. And then came the phone call that shattered what little hope I had left. Hannah, I have the most amazing news, my sister Claire gushed, her voice practically glowing through the phone. Jeffrey proposed. We're getting married. I forced a smile she couldn't see. That's wonderful, Claire. Congratulations. I know, right? And Mom and Dad are being so generous. They said we can have whatever we want. No budget limits. We're thinking a destination wedding. Maybe Italy or the south of France. Her laughter rang through the phone like a melody from another world, a world where no one had to choose between love and survival. As she talked about floral arrangements and designer dresses, I stared at the oxygen machine beside Ethan's bed. Each soft hiss reminded me of the price of his next breath. Something inside me broke that day, not in anger, but in realization. My parents had chosen their favorite child long ago, and now their choice would cost me everything. The months that followed were a blur of hospital visits, unpaid bills, and quiet despair. Every morning, I'd wake up to the steady beep of Ethan's monitor and remind myself to keep going, because he needed me to. Meanwhile, Claire's wedding plans blossomed like a garden in spring, growing bigger, brighter, and more expensive with every passing week. Every family conversation somehow circled back to the wedding. Mom would call to tell me about cake tastings at five-star restaurants, venue tours in Tuscany via video call, or the absolutely divine floral arrangements that cost more than my monthly salary. I tried to be happy for her. Claire was my little sister. There had been a time when we were inseparable, but that time had died long before Ethan got sick. My parents had always treated us differently. Claire was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was the honor student, the sorority girl, the one who landed a marketing job that made my dad beam with pride. And me, I was the daughter who settled for being a teacher, who made bad choices, who had a child out of wedlock. Now, I was the daughter whose sick child had become a financial burden. One hot July evening, my phone rang again. "Hannah." "Honey," my mother began in her sweet, careful tone, "we need to talk about the wedding." "What about it?" I asked, exhaustion dripping from my voice. I'd just finished teaching summer school and spent 3 hours at the hospital with Ethan. "Well, Claire wants you to be a bridesmaid, of course," she said brightly. "But the dresses are going to be about $300, and we'll need you to order yours soon." $300. I did the math in my head. That was nearly 2 weeks of Ethan's medication. "I don't know if I can afford that right now," I said quietly. There was a pause, the kind that stretched into silence so thick you could hear the judgment hiding in it. "Hannah," my mother said finally, "this is your sister's wedding." "I know," I replied, trying to keep my composure. "But things are really tight. Ethan's medical expenses—" "You're always talking about Ethan's medical expenses," she interrupted, her voice sharp now. "I understand he's sick, but life goes on for the rest of us. This is Claire's special day." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. "Can I think about it?" "The deadline to order the dress is next week," she said flatly. "Claire has her heart set on having you in the wedding party." After she hung up, I sat in the dark of my apartment and cried silently. The kind of crying that doesn't make sound, but empties your chest like someone carving out your heart. My son was dying, and my family was worried about matching dresses. By August, Ethan's condition had taken a sharp turn. The experimental treatment was no longer an option. We'd missed the window. Now, the doctors focused on comfort care. I hated that phrase. It sounded gentle, but it was really just a soft way to say waiting for him to die. I took a leave of absence from school to be with him full-time. My principal was kind, but the leave was unpaid. My financial situation went from bad to catastrophic overnight. I applied for grants, assistance programs, charity funds, anything that might help. But most had waiting lists months long or required paperwork I couldn't even begin to gather. And through it all, my phone never stopped ringing with updates about the wedding, Claire's bachelorette trip, the rehearsal dinner menu, the venue contract deposit. It was endless. One day my mother called sounding ecstatic. "Oh, Hannah, the bachelorette party was magical. We rented a villa in Napa Valley, 12 of Claire's closest friends, wine tastings, spa treatments, private chefs. It was absolutely perfect." I gripped the phone, forcing my voice to stay calm. "How much did it cost?" I asked. "Oh, I don't know exactly," she said breezily. "Your father handled it. Maybe 10,000, but it was worth every penny to see Claire so happy. $10,000, more than a tenth of what could have saved Ethan's life, spent on a weekend of wine and laughter. Felt something cold and final settle inside me. That last string tying me to them, the belief that maybe, deep down, they cared, snapped. "That sounds wonderful," I said quietly. "You know," my mother continued, her tone shifting to something sharper, "I wish you'd try to be more excited about this wedding. Claire feels like you're not really supporting her." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh that even startled me. "She feels I'm not supporting her?" "Yes," my mother said seriously. "She's noticed you've been distant, and you still haven't confirmed if you'll be a bridesmaid. Honestly, Hannah, maybe if you managed your money better, you wouldn't always be in this position." The words hit me like a slap. Managed my money better? I was drowning in debt because I'd spent every dollar trying to keep my son alive, because the people who could have helped me chose to fund a wedding instead. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I sat beside Ethan's bed, brushing his hair back as he slept. His breathing was shallow, his cheeks pale. He looked so small, so fragile. And I realized something I'd been too afraid to admit. My parents didn't just fail me. They had failed him. October arrived with an early frost, and the world outside my apartment seemed to mirror what was happening inside me. Cold, gray, and dying. Ethan's condition worsened faster than anyone expected. The doctors spoke in hushed tones, their eyes avoiding mine when I asked how long he had. "Maybe weeks," one of them whispered finally. "We'll do everything we can to keep him comfortable." Comfortable. That word haunted me. How could a mother ever feel comfortable watching her child fade away? I barely slept. I lived in the hospital now, sitting by Ethan's bedside, holding his tiny hand through endless nights. His once bright blue eyes had dimmed, but his smile, that soft, brave smile, still flickered every time I told him stories about space or dinosaurs or the adventures we'd have when he got better. He was still hoping, still believing, but I wasn't. Not anymore. My parents visited a few times, but never for long. They'd sit awkwardly, talk softly about how strong I was, then glance at the clock. "Claire's final dress fitting is tomorrow," Mom would mention. Or, "We have a call with the caterers at 5. And then they'd leave, sighing with relief as if escaping some unpleasant chore. Every time they walked out, I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how they could walk away from the boy who called them, Grandma and Grandpa from the child, who just wanted to live. But I didn't. I didn't have the strength to waste any more words on people who'd already proven how little they cared. One gray afternoon, I came home from the hospital for a quick shower. I checked my mailbox, and among the bills and medical statements was a glossy white envelope, embossed with gold lettering. "You're invited." It was Claire's wedding invitation, a photo of her and Jeffrey smiling on a beach, the date printed in elegant script. I stared at it for a long moment, my hands trembling. Below it, a smaller note in my mother's handwriting read, "We hope you'll reconsider being in the wedding. It would mean a lot to your sister. Love, Mom and Dad." I tore it in half. That night, Ethan had another episode. The machines beeped wildly and nurses rushed in. I stood frozen in the corner, praying, pleading, bargaining. But deep down, I already knew. At 2:13 a.m., my son, my world, my reason for everything, was gone. The hospital room fell silent. The machine flatlined. I sat there numb, holding his tiny hand long after it grew cold. No one from my family came that night. No one even called until the next afternoon. Mom's voice was trembling when she finally spoke. "Oh, Hannah," we just heard. "I can't even imagine what you're feeling." She paused. "But you know, honey, maybe it's for the best. He's not suffering anymore." I hung up, because I wouldn't, listen to her try to justify the death of my child as for the best. The days after Ethan's funeral blurred together. My world had shrunk to an empty apartment, a stack of unpaid bills, and a silence so loud it was deafening. My parents visited once. They brought flowers, white lilies, the kind people always bring when they don't know what to say. Dad said, "You need to start moving forward." Mom said, You can't live in the past. And then, she added softly, Claire's wedding is next week. We understand if you're not up to it, but it would mean a lot if you came. Family should be together for big moments. Big moments. I wanted to laugh. My son's death wasn't a big enough moment for them, but a wedding was. I said nothing, but inside, something shifted. Something cold, sharp, and deliberate. For months I had been begging, pleading, crying. Now I was done asking, done caring, done trying to make them see what they refused to see. If my family wanted to celebrate without guilt, I would give them a reason to remember what they'd done. I didn't know what that meant yet. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. They would never forget the price of their choices. Claire's wedding was the kind of event people brag about for years. The kind that gets featured in magazines. The kind my parents had dreamed about since the day Claire was born. They rented an entire vineyard in Tuscany. White roses lined every pathway. A string quartet played under an ancient oak tree. Guests were dressed in silk, laughter spilling over champagne flutes. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. My invitation had sat unopened for weeks. But in the end, I decided to go. Not for Claire. Not for my parents. For Ethan, because they needed to remember him. The flight to Italy felt surreal. I wore a simple black dress, not the bridesmaid gown I couldn't afford. When I arrived, heads turned. I could see the shock ripple through my mother's face when she spotted me. "Hannah," she whispered, clutching her pearls. "You came!" I smiled faintly. "Of course. Families should be together for big moments, right?" Her smile faltered, but she said nothing. Claire approached next, radiant in her designer gown. "Oh my God, Hannah, you made it," she said brightly. "I wasn't sure you'd come after everything." Her tone was light, as if everything was just a minor inconvenience, not the death of my child. I forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it. The ceremony began as the sun dipped below the vineyards. Vows were exchanged, kisses captured by photographers, applause echoing across the hills. I sat quietly in the second row, staring at the people who had turned their backs on my son. When the reception started, I slipped away for a moment, pulling out a small USB drive from my purse. It contained a 5-minute video, one I had spent nights editing through tears. The DJ was just about to play the couple's first dance song when I approached him. I leaned close and whispered, "The bride and groom asked for a surprise slideshow first, this one." He nodded, unsuspecting. The lights dimmed. The first image that appeared on the massive projector screen wasn't of the couple. It was of Ethan, my sweet boy, smiling in his hospital gown, holding a stuffed dinosaur. A murmur spread through the guests. Then, my voice filled the room, shaky but clear. "This is Ethan, my son. He was 7 years old. He loved space, pizza, and bedtime stories about astronauts. Photo after photo flashed. Ethan laughing, coloring, sleeping beside oxygen tubes. Ethan had a rare heart condition. The doctors said a treatment could save his life. It cost $85,000. The room had gone utterly still. The only sound was the soft hum of the projector. My parents, the same people who paid $230,000 for this wedding, said they didn't have the money to help. They told me to be realistic, and while they planned this, the next photo appeared, a screenshot of the wedding's luxury budget breakdown. Flights, decor, catering, total, $232,700, gasps. Someone dropped a glass. While they planned this, my son was dying. I could see Claire frozen near the dance floor, her hand covering her mouth. My mother's face had gone pale. Ethan died 3 months ago. He never got the treatment. He never got to see his 8th birthday. But I wanted you all to meet him anyway, to remember what this family chose to forget. The screen faded to black. Then, a final message appeared in white letters. "In loving memory of Ethan Bennett, the boy who deserved more love than this family could give." The silence was deafening. Then someone, a stranger, maybe one of Jeffrey's friends, began to clap softly. Another joined, and another, until the entire room was filled with quiet, heavy applause, not for the wedding, but for Ethan, My parents didn't move. My mother was trembling, tears streaking her makeup. My father just sat there, jaw tight, unable to look at me. I turned to leave. "Hannah, wait!" Claire called, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this?" I stopped at the doorway and looked back. Because the truth deserves a moment too. Then I walked away. I never heard from my parents again after that night. They tried calling once, but I blocked the number. Word spread quickly about the incident at the wedding, about the daughter who humiliated her family. Let them talk. I wasn't ashamed anymore. I took the remainder of the crowdfunding money and started a small nonprofit in Ethan's name. The Ethan Hart Foundation, helping low-income families afford life-saving treatments. Every time I see another child get the chance Ethan never had, I feel him with me. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can almost hear his voice. "It's okay, Mom. You did it. No, Ethan. We did it."